This is SoundNotion, the weekly podcast for new music and music news. I'm David McDonald.
And I'm Sam Merciers. This week we're joined by all three members of the Cavell Trio, emanating from the University of Alabama.
They're emanating, huh?
Emanating, yes. They've got a new CD coming out soon, and we're going to talk about the music and how they came up with the selections and the original pieces that they have on the CD. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, so actually I should have said this in the intro. We have Ozzy Molina on clarinet,
Hey.
Jenny Mann on bassoon, and Shelly Megason on oboe. So this is a Reed Trio, in case you didn't pick up on that. So you guys have when is the CD actually going to come out?
About 3 weeks, probably.
Okay. Is it going to be available on iTunes or just in a physical version?
No, it's going to be on iTunes.
It's going to be on anywhere else that people can get digital music?
Kind of all the standards.
Archive music, yeah.
Archive Music, Amazon, those kinds of places, CD Baby, that all have kind of digital versions.
So you're going to shotgun blast every way you can get it out there.
That's right.
Pretty much,
That's
yes.
it, yes.
Awesome. So let's jump right into talking about the CD. I see here that you guys have, let's see, how many pieces by living composers? Well, the pick of the week this week is going to be Two Girls and a Boy by Amir Zahari, who is on faculty there in Alabama with you guys.
Yes.
And also, it's a little small here. Why don't you tell me who the original pieces are by?
Okay. Well, the original pieces, they're all, I mean, forgive me, they're all written for Reed Trio, right?
Right.
And so then the living composers on this album are the three Americans that are on this album. So Amir Zahari, who is our faculty composer here at UA.
Mm-hmm.
Most people know Peter Schickele, of course, through PDQ Bach fame. He wrote a little trio as a wedding present, actually, for some friends of his. Diversions is the name of the piece. And the other one is Sept Vignettes by James Chaudroir. He used to teach at the University of Wisconsin in Oshkosh, and now he's professor emeritus, and he grew up in Louisiana, and it's 7 little short movements that are really quite charming. So it's nice to have 3 pieces by American composers who were all still living.
Now, the Two Girls and a Boy, was that commissioned specifically by you guys, or did he just happen to have a piece laying around?
No, he wrote it specifically for us, and it's really musically in his mind kind of about us and how we interact, not just musically but also personally. So it's very personal to us, certainly.
So you guys interrupt each other and speak and hawk it back and forth a lot?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do, actually.
But also, a lot of the music that we choose, if you listen to the other CD and this CD, that's a thing that's really attractive to us in composition as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our style. That's the music we love to play.
Well, cool. So we'll be listening to that later. I wanted to get into how you guys came to be a trio.
Okay. Go ahead, one of you guys. It's all good.
Well, back in 2006, we saw a flyer for the International Experiencing Villalobos Festival that was going to be held, and so Shelly approached the two of us and asked if we would be interested in learning the Villalobos Trio together. You know, we decided to start off light and easy as a group by learning the Villalobos, and we had played together in quintet and just decided that we enjoyed each other, and so we took on the challenge. Yeah.
And the chemistry worked, so you just kept doing it?
Absolutely.
That's exactly right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
So, Dave, you look like you were about to say something.
I was curious about so this is not outside of the Villalobos trio that you mentioned, which I think I've heard exactly once before in my life. I am not familiar with a ton of repertoire for this medium. Is this a more standard ensemble than I'm aware of, or is this something where you're actively kind of growing the repertoire?
I think it's becoming more of a standard group in North America recently.
Okay.
It was a very, very popular combination in Europe, particularly in France, in the early to mid 20th century, which is where a lot of our repertoire comes from. But you see a lot we actually know of quite a few reed trios in the United States now that are quite active and kind of resurrecting this repertoire. And
well, I think it's helped by the fact that you go to any big state school or any school that has a pretty big music department, and you're probably going to have a pretty good bassoonist, oboist, and clarinetist.
right.
Actually, with school, have you guys started school yet?
Yes.
We started last week, yeah.
Okay, so did I, and so did Dave, and we're all involved in teaching in a music department. And it's interesting to me that how music departments address or don't address new music. So I think all of this stuff, even though some of it was, from a little bit further back in the century, it all at least is in some way new.
Right.
I want to get, since you all we're all teachers and interact with students, I wonder what you think about the role of new music in the education system collegiately. What do you think about its role, and do you think? Well, I'm kind of leading the witness here. Do you think that we need to focus on it more, as I do?
Yeah, I would agree with you, certainly, as I think you guys probably would too.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
It's an interesting issue and topic for sure, and I find where we are demographically, I find our student body, particularly at the undergraduate level, are more resistant to it than other places I've been, so it poses more challenges, I find, to kind of get them to embrace newer music. And yeah,
It makes me wonder if it's a Southern thing, because certainly I wasn't teaching undergrads at Michigan State, but the culture seemed to be way more open to it. And now that I'm teaching at the University of North Alabama, and it seems they don't have a taste for it at all.
right.
And it seems like it's an uphill battle to get them to engage with it.
Yeah.
True.
I wonder if it's also a lot. Go ahead.
I think having living composers like Amir Zahari on our faculty, we're very fortunate to have a younger, extremely active composer who is really, he writes for our students all the time too. He wrote a piece for our graduate woodwind quintet last year and goes into our music appreciation classes and plays a lot of his music and talks about it. And so I think having someone like him is tremendously helpful to our student body, for sure.
He's a great Pied Piper for contemporary music here. I mean, you can tell that's just sort of in his aesthetic and his being, like that he wants to bring people into that new music, and he's always writing new pieces. I mean, he's just constantly writing. And someone like that, you're really excited to work with. And that he wrote us a piece I thought was really flattering. I was like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do.
Well, I think he does one thing really well in that piece. Well, he does lots of things really well, but one thing is it's not super long. If you're trying to get younger students to engage with music, with new music, as in, newer, weirder music, it's 13 minutes. A slog of 13 minutes is a lot harder to take than 4 or 5 minutes.
Yes.
Especially considering their brains are used to hearing 3 to 5 minute chunks of music, and that's the way they process it. Dave and I are always, well, Dave agrees with me somewhat, but I am very militant. Dave always expects me to say that piece was too long every time we hear a piece.
Even if it's 4.5 minutes long.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting too that his music, the piece, is not what I would consider the kinder, gentler new music that you hear a lot these days. That's either minimalistic sounding and very pulse based and not a lot of dissonance. It's it sounds more like the angst-ridden mid-century German music that usually gives the younger students issues with their ears.
Right.
Actually, why don't we go ahead and give a listen to the pick?
Yeah, we can do that. So this is Two Girls and a Boy by Amir Zahari, performed by our guests, the Cavell Reed Trio. So that was an excerpt from Two Girls and a Boy by Amir Zahari, performed by our guest, the Cavell Reed Trio. Thank you guys so much for sharing that with us. It's a really fantastic recording.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we should actually give a shout out to Sergey Kvitko, who was the proprietor of Blue Griffin Recording.
Yes.
It's actually in Lansing, Michigan, and a lot of people who have come through Michigan State go back to him for recording. I think H2 has recorded with him even after they all left school. And you guys even went so far as to get him to come down there.
We did.
Yeah.
We did the first CD. We went up there to him, and while it was terrific and everything was handled beautifully, I thought the second time, instead of having 3 people go up there, we would just have one person come down and bring his stuff, and in the end, it was great. It worked out beautifully in our hall, and it sounds pretty good. So. Yeah,
I like the way it doesn't have too much velour on top of the recording. You know what I mean? It's got some room noise. It sounds like it's being played in a hall, but it's not smoothing it out with tons of reverb. You can hear that the meat and potatoes of the bassoon, and I like to hear a little bit of. Because when you play a woodwind instrument, there's some ancillary noise a little bit involved, and I think getting rid of all of that kind of deadens it in some way.
Right.
Yeah.
I would love to hear this live because the back and forth things that happen. I mean, the stereo image gets some of it, but it would be even cooler if you were in the physical space where this was going down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool piece.
You really get the feel of a conversation going on there too, like Sam said earlier, of sharing little bits of motivic material, but then also sharing note by note a melody is like in the juxtaposition of those two ideas, where each person has their own little idea in some sections, and then in other sections there's just the one idea that the whole group is sharing. It's really interesting compositional idea.
One of the things when he wrote the piece, and he would, as he was writing it, he would, we only learned it. He didn't write parts for us. There weren't individual parts, so we had to learn it all. We had 3 scores, and we had to do it that way, which isn't uncommon, right? But then one of the things was we kept asking him, what's the program going on in your mind? What are the images you're having? He's like, oh, I'm not going to share that with you. You just learn the piece, and then after you learn it, then I'll tell you the story. And so then in the end, it turns out to be like the program notes say it pretty well in terms of it being a kind of a Woody Allen discussion among friends that sort of one interrupts the other, and then one person goes off to the side while another comes in, and so actually the story is quite clever, but he didn't lead us on to that at all. It's like, just play the piece, and then when you're done doing your thing with it, then I'll tell you what it's about. And I really enjoyed it.
That sounds like a very apt metaphor to me, a Woody Allen conversation.
Yes.
When you see a Woody Allen movie, and if the dialogue isn't irritating you a little bit by the back and forth and interruption, then he's not doing it right, I think.
Exactly.
It's kind of like an Aaron Sorkin movie. Like a lot of those Aaron Sorkin things are like, wow, okay, the conversations are just, everyththing's just layered so tightly on top of it. It's just like, okay.
He should do another piece for you guys called The Walk and Talk.
Yeah,
I think you guys are familiar with that term that he became famous for with West Wing. Yeah, that was cool. So what's coming up for you guys? You guys gonna do a massive worldwide tour to support your album?
We're going to have a release event here that's actually going to be a benefit for our symphony. So that's the next thing that's coming up. That'll be in about a month.
Okay.
Where are we going next?
We haven't really decided. We've got a few options that we're sort of toying with, various tour options. Jenny spent a good part of her childhood and school years in Texas, and we've talked a lot about doing a Texas tour. We've talked about doing Northeast, where Ozzy's from, and we've also talked about heading to Western Canada, where I'm from, and doing some touring. So we are currently kind of exploring our options. You know, we certainly have some local performances lined up for this fall, and lots of rehearsing and new music to learn. So
that's the thing. We have to find a new batch of music to learn, which actually is part of one of the funny things about us. If I could share that with you guys, if that's all right. The process how we pick music, right? So the advantage of being at a university is that you have access to wonderful libraries, and so I am sort of in charge of getting the repertoire. So I get on interlibrary loan, which is pretty common now with lots of major universities, and so I have lots of research, lots of collections of bibliographies of most of the known Reed Trio music, and so I just go down and I just interlibrary loan tons of them, and they come in stacks. I mean, literally right here on the floor behind us there is just.
It's this big.
I mean, if I could, it's just enormous stacks of music down there, and so. And so what we do is we read through them all, and we have sort of a complicated process on how we pick our music. We play it through, and we do either the thumbs up, the thumbs medium, or the thumbs down. And if you get two thumbs up, it stays, right? If it's three mediums, we sort of keep it in the pile, and if there are any no's, then it just goes back.
Okay, it sounds like a reality show that we could make out of this. Like, could you give a rose to someone, or could somebody get voted off the island? Like, I think there's some unexplored potential here.
No, and we can never find a better way to pick music, really. And so we just did that, and so we played through a few of the pieces that are on this album, and most of them were straight up three thumbs, no problems, The
VH1 behind the music about you guys eventually is going to have like the when you have a big fight, because having one person being able to have veto power like that, you can have two thumbs up. Well, that's the question. Does two thumbs up counter one thumbs down?
Yes, that's happened. There's a piece on this album actually that was.
Yeah.
Actually, I was the only thumb up on it originally,
and then she swayed him.
Yeah. It was the Lutoslawski trio.
Yeah, well, I saw that, and I'm actually very anxious to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, it's an early work, and it's really contrapuntally dense, and sort of I mean, knowing what we know now of his later work, you can still feel the sort of student trying to find his way through it, Right. And so at first I was not a fan, and
I loved it immediately.
She loved it immediately. Shelley loved it immediately, and Jenny was like, right. And so we were kind of like medium thumbs, and
I just started begging and pleading and begging and pleading.
That's right.
So.
And I think,
I started studying his music a little bit more and really fell in love with his concerto for orchestra, and then that sort of gave me a little more of an ear for the Reed Trio, and so it won me over.
I felt very strongly about the Shickley diversions. I think they weren't so convinced at first. I just really liked it straight off. And then, so, you compromise. One person likes one, then you'll do one piece and another. But, we definitely have three thumbs down on things, two thumbs down, and so then we just send the music back, and the pieces we like, we buy. And, that's why, so we have constant new music, and we're never at a loss for finding stuff and for trying new things.
Right. So you guys, it sounds like you guys are this effort is supported by the university very well. Is that the case? Or we're gonna get in trouble.
It's not part of our load credit. We are not considered a faculty ensemble here.
Okay.
If that's what you're asking, this is something that we just do for the love of it, and we carve out time, sometimes 6 hours a week of rehearsal if we can fit it in. Just because we love it. Now our colleagues are very supportive.
That's kind of what I was getting at. This is something that happens all over the country, you know. Professors get together and do these things and don't get a lot out of it except musical satisfaction, you know.
Right.
But I think it's very good to demonstrate this kind of thing to the students too, because if you look at, you know, all the big chamber groups that are hot and successful these days seem to be an outgrowth of people who knew each other in school and started doing something. And if they see you guys doing this just for the love of it, they might end up getting themselves a career out of it. If, you know, if they do what a lot of other ensembles have done lately.
I think the thing with us, as opposed to these groups, the Eighth Blackbird and groups of this sort of ilk, right, is that we are supported. You know, we have applied for. You know, we're grant writing people. We get grant funds to make these discs. Our living does not hinge on whether this disc sells or not.
Right.
And so we feel the freedom to obviously choose the repertoire we like, but then to feel empowered that, you know, no one is looking over us while we're doing this.
Right.
And you know, I mean, obviously you answer to the people that give you the grant money, but otherwise, you know, it's not something that's, you know, it's not feast or famine. It's completely out of love, and we don't have to do this. And a lot of groups around the country do the exact same thing. They don't have to do it. We didn't have to record an album. We didn't have to record a second album. But it's something that we feel very strongly that this ensemble does great things for woodwinds that is untapped. And we are really enjoying what we're doing right now, and we don't foresee it stopping anytime in the near future.
Yeah, I think, well, that's what I was getting at, is I think you guys are doing important work because you don't have to do it, you don't have to feed the monkey, as the dude would say.
That's right.
You know, and so you can do, like, I don't know, is there a recording out there of the Luboslavsky?
Yes. There is
one.
one other one. And actually, can I say a little note about our recording process?
Certainly.
I think we're pretty unique, and I'm actually super, super proud of this. Everything that you hear from us is very lightly edited. Mm-hmm. There is nothing constructed at all. Well, really, truly not. I mean, we rehearse so much, and we feel so strongly about recording as a true performance as we can, that by the time we get to the recording chair, we've played it so much that you hear a very pure performance.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate that very much. Actually, when I buy recordings, I would prefer live recordings over studio recordings, because even in classical music these days, it's sort of a uber-produced, put together out of 19 different takes thing, and it does a couple of things. To me, it kind of takes some of the life away from it, but it also creates unrealistic expectations for performers.
Yeah.
You know, you want that perfect performance, but when an orchestra actually plays something, you know, I remember when Chicago came to Lansing, and, you know, I'm like, oh, Chicago, you know, I've only ever heard them on recordings, and I'm like, well, they were certainly good, but it was just an orchestra, you know, and the horn player fracked a note here, and, you know, things that happen to actual musicians actually happen on stage.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a beautiful thing when that happens. I mean, you're not. It's not beautiful when you're sitting in the chair, okay? But I mean, it's you know, it's fluid, it's organic, it's happening at that moment, and it's very exciting, you know.
Yeah.
And we're on stage together. We're not sitting in rooms with headphones and click tracks.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, and you know Sergey well, and lots of people that know Blue Griffin and what they do. He has great ears. And he trusts what we do, and we like the way he treats us.
He's amazing.
And, and we like, you know, and you also play repertoire better that you like.
Right.
You know, if something internal about you just resonates with a piece more than another that you're required to play, then something is going to come through when you play that piece that's just a little more special than when you're eating your spinach, you know?
Right.
You know.
I wonder if there's a concerto for Reed Trio.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Funny you mentioned that.
We might be working on that right now.
Ah, that's
They
awesome.
got thumbs up.
Yeah.
Got approval.
Well, we don't have that many concertos. I mean, you're
Right.
sort of stuck, you know. I mean,
One.
you know, right. Well, there are two.
Oh, that's
We-
right.
There are two.
We all taught at the Hot Springs Summer Music Festival in Arkansas this past June. And it was a wonderful couple of weeks, and we were the kind of resident ensemble for the festival this year. And one of the performances we did was a piece by Tomasi that is, he kind of terms it a suite for reed trio and string orchestra. So we got to perform that with the Hot Springs Summer Music Festival Orchestra, which was really incredible.
Thank
really
you, Peter
fun.
Bay, for that.
Yes.
Thank you, conductor Peter Bay.
Divertimento Corsica for
Okay.
reed trio and string orchestra.
All right.
Good piece.
We're also working on a true concerto now.
By your clarinet player, so you know Lefebvre, the founding clarinet professor of the Paris Conservatory. He
I
wrote
played one on my recital as an undergrad.
There you go.
and he wrote a concerto for oboe, clarinet, and bassoon and orchestra, a symphony concertante. And so it was been out of print for a long time, and it just came back into print, and so we've been working on it. So that's something in the new batch of stuff that we're working on.
Ah, so that'll require some sort of a grant to pay an orchestra to play.
Yes,
I would imagine.
That piece is on our next docket, and Devil Winds. It's a piece by University of Michigan composer Greg Simon.
Recommended to us by the wind conductor Mike Haycock, so thank you for that.
Yeah, and so that's the other piece right now that we're doing. We have some rehearsals this week, and we'll look at some new pieces, but those are the two that are sort of right now on the front burner.
Awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing that. And I'm really looking forward to hearing everything else on this CD.
Thank you.
It's always interesting when you hear a Peter Shickley piece, you expect to be laughing or something, because PDQ Bach pieces. But he's actually anyone who doesn't know, he can actually compose and not just
Absolutely.
and not just Ray Stevens style.
Right.
Right. No, it's a terrific piece, and it's not very long, and it's again, reed trio music tends to be either little miniatures
Right.
or not very long movements, totaling about 15 minutes.
Right.
So his is about 8 minutes, and it's a charming piece. It's a really good piece.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So be sure to let us know when the new CD is going to come out, because I'm definitely interested in hearing in that piece. So individually, is there anything coming up that you individually want to plug? Anything at all?
Well,
No, school just started, you idiot.
say what?
No, school just started, you idiot.
Yeah, right, exactly, right.
Well, we're all three lucky to be at that point now where we can devote ourselves completely to the trio.
Yeah, that's
pretty
awesome.
I think this is for all three of us, I think. I'll speak for myself, I guess, not my colleagues.
Good idea. No, I'm just kidding.
There is no other performing that I do that I enjoy more than this trio, and working with these two people, and nothing matches it. I enjoy playing in orchestras. It's fun when I get the opportunity to do so. I enjoy playing solo repertoire, but this is what I enjoy the most. So
Yeah, the biggest thing I miss about playing is playing chamber music.
yeah.
That was always the most rewarding thing that I got to do.
Well, and I think that's for me anyway. The reason what you guys are saying about playing chamber music is the reason that I really like writing for chamber music and listening to chamber music, because the people that play it are people like you all that feel so strongly about it and spend so much time and energy on those unique kind of challenges of chamber music and those unique forms of expression that aren't possible in solo repertoire or orchestral repertoire, and it's really great that chamber music is so that it has its own unique challenges, but also that it's possible to be put on anywhere without nearly the logistical concerns of an orchestra. And so a community in Alabama can have an amazing reed trio like you three, and that's we don't need to compare you to the New York Philharmonic, right? This is this awesome thing that this community has, right? When you go to an orchestra concert, you're like, oh well, that's cool that the Orlando Philharmonic is playing, but call me back call me back when the Atlanta Symphony comes to town, or call me back when Chicago comes to town, like Sam said. Like that's not really a thing that we do with chamber music. Like we get to have all these little local these groups that have these connections to their communities. It's really a wonderful thing.
Actually, if I could interject there one time, in terms of where we play and things we do, I think one of the big things, and Jenny, I think Jenny likes telling the story a lot. But when we were last summer, we were invited to play at the International Clarinet Conference, and it was in Assisi, in Italy. And so we get to the town, which is of course stunning and gorgeous, and as that part of Italy is, right? And I hit the sack. I got there, I was exhausted. I don't sleep on planes. But then Shelley and Jenny went walking around, and I think Jenny could tell the story a little better here.
Oh, well.
Or whoever. No, it's all good.
Interject. We were wandering, and we found a beautiful little wine bar sort of tucked away inside a cave, and it's called Vivenda Assisi.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yep. And the proprietor, her name is Mila Haloun. We just struck up a friendship, and as we were chatting, she asked if we would be interested in coming to play.
Mm-hmm. So we just set a date the week we were there, and after our conference performance, decided to just go and play at this wine bar. So we ended up playing for 3 hours from 9 p.m. to midnight on a Friday night. And
to a packed house.
And people just kept circulating in and around. And
playing Lutoslawski, I would imagine.
It was what?
Playing a lot of Lutoslawski.
Actually, we did play Lutoslawski.
Yeah. Oh, no, we played everything that's on the album right now.
Well,
wow.
That's the thing that shocked us. I think we went into it with the attitude like we would normally have here, playing at a middle school or a venue with maybe not trained musicians, and tried to keep the repertoire light, and then kind of got tired of playing the same things and said, oh, let's just pull out Shickley, let's pull this out. And people, I think the people there are just so much more well-versed and listen to these types of things. So people loved it, so we just pulled out all the rest of our more modern repertoire. And
you got to trust your audience. Yeah. You must trust your audience, and they really rose to the occasion.
And as a clarinet player, I got to say, it was awesome to see, because it was very close to the conference site. You had, like, the best clarinet players in the world, like, stopping in and having a glass of wine. It's like, hey, a Reed Trio. And then they come back 20 minutes later. And it was just one of those really great nights. And so now, whenever we do a concert anywhere, we try and find a wine bar in that town. And then we do another concert at the wine bar.
Yeah. That sounds great. Yeah. That's a really exciting thing. That's another kind of cool chamber thing that's a trend is these casual venues for chamber music.
Please don't say flash mob. Please don't say flash mob.
Not flash mob. But like more casual venues though, like or non-traditional venues at least. I wonder. So what is the atmosphere in a wine bar like when you're playing this kind of music? Obviously, this isn't like a concert hall. Does everything stop when you're playing like in a concert hall?
Not the same way.
For the most part, I mean, people are attentive, but it's not. I think it goes in and out of really hyper-focused attention to sort of, okay, I'm gonna take a drag of my cigarette and take a little swig of wine, and I'll get back to them in a minute or two, and then
it's like listening to a jazz combo. I mean, it's that same kind of people shout comments at us from time to time.
Oh, absolutely.
Come by and stand behind us, and and watch the music go by. But I love that.
Yeah. Do you ever get heckled?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Do you have some like canned responses like a good comedian would for the hecklers?
Well, when you have a reed in your mouth, you can't really.
That's right. That's right.
That's true.
They got us at a disadvantage there, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Are you guys familiar with an outfit, or I don't know what the right name would be, a network, I guess, called Classical Revolution?
Yes, absolutely.
We had, I don't know if he's the
he's one of the founders.
One of the founders. We had him on the show quite a while back. I don't know. It's very interesting. It's the move to non-traditional venues is interesting because, there's a lot of talk about how to get people to engage with new music these days, but at the very least, letting people not feel like reverence is demanded of them. When you go to a concert hall and you're supposed to sit and then not clap after movements, and I think that turns a lot of people off. And you can drink wine and you can pay attention or not pay attention, and we're not going to pass judgment on you either way is a good start.
Because we just play for music's sake. I mean, it's just you got to bring you got to bring music to people.
Right.
And don't put them at don't put them. You have to put them at ease and just realize that it's a fun thing, and it's something that you take in, and it's no pretense involved.
Well, you said something a minute ago that really struck me, is you got to trust your audience, and I've never really thought about that. That's a great sentiment, and I think that's especially salient for composers because
trust and respect, I think.
Yeah, trust and respect. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm terrified when I have a piece being played and I need to probably trust the audience more.
Well, it helps to, as they say, know your audience, and what is it? Recognize your voter, make contact with your voter, get your voter to come out. So then when you do that with music, it's the same thing with an audience. You have to know your audience, know what they'll like, but also don't compromise on what you do.
Right.
And present it to them in an honest way, and I think people will respond in an honest way.
When we often preface pieces, we're not shy about talking. We rarely do a formal recital without any speech. We'll even talk in between movements sometimes, and particularly with the Chaudroir piece, you're really good at this, talking about the visual images with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the living composers we mentioned earlier, these sept vignettes, or 7 short movements by James Chaudroir, and they are incredibly evocative and I think everyone who hears them, I think, just gets certain images in their minds, and they might be similar, but for everybody it's different. So that's a piece we'll often encourage people to just think about, what ideas does that bring to you? Do you think of a story? Do you think of something in nature? And then we'll interact with them and have them tell us what they heard in the music. And I think giving them a directed approach like that, too, makes them listen differently, which we've gotten a lot of those comments, too, is, I never thought about listening for a story before. That was really neat. And
Jenny, we did a concert when we premiered Amir's piece last year. We did a concert here in town at the Art Center, and where she brought crayons
and paper and clipboards.
Right, and said, we're just going to put this out there, and whatever comes to mind, draw it. Whatever images you have, draw it. And we got some fascinating
really cool
things. I mean, that we just make you look at music a completely different way, and it was just a great way to engage the audience and interact them and put them in a different headspace when they're listening to some music,
That is a fantastic idea. Like, that's getting some grist from some of the audience's creativity, because lots of people are, amateur artists in that sense. They can draw really well.
Yeah.
If they're a banker or a lawyer or whatever. That's a really great idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the top-selling categories of apps in the App Store. Apps that let you draw pictures, right?
Absolutely.
Is it right? I don't know. To drawing pictures, right?
Yeah, and people make a lot of money on picture drawing apps.
Have you ever seen the portrait of Morgan Freeman that was drawn on an iPad? It looks like a picture of Morgan Freeman.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing.
That's cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Cool.
Did you guys collect the images and do anything with them afterwards?
We have them. We had kind of hoped that we could maybe put some of them into the CD booklet for the album that's coming out in a couple of weeks, but ran out of space.
Right.
So we're kind of maybe planning to do something with them, whether it's on the website that we develop or something like that. But there's some really, really interesting ones for sure.
Well, and we'll do that at more concerts in the future, so we could possibly, come up with a visual companion to some of our audio files.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
I see a commissioning project where you have the different images are different short movements. Ooh.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
Good idea.
Actually, that's pretty
Yeah, so I always pressure ensembles that you guys need to commission pieces. That's sort of my duty as a composer.
It seems a little self-serving when you put it like that.
Well, yeah, it absolutely is self-serving.
I think we've gotten through sort of the beginning things. I mean, all of our pieces Both albums have works that have never been recorded before, which I think serves an important role in what we do. And now it's about building on Amir's contribution to us and to start getting more composers to write for us and
Absolutely.
have people enjoy the Reed Trio more, because it's important.
Yeah. Well, speaking of new ways to engage with the audience, you're going to love this one, Ozzy.
Yeah.
Martin,
I was looking at when I got your email, I was reading this last night and I thought it was fascinating. Yeah.
Martin, I say his last name the way you say it there, Ozzy.
I think it's Fröst.
Fröst. Okay. Martin Fröst with 2 dots over the O, however that comes out. Apologies to any Swedes out there. He's if you don't know, I mean, this guy is an unmitigated virtuoso, super awesome. I mean, that's what he's made his career out of. Is he can do
kind
all
of our heavyweight champion right now, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, he can do all the tricks. He's not just a great player, but he can do all the tricks and double tonguing and triple tonguing and circular breathing and all the gymnastic stuff too. Very, very, very well. Mm-hmm. And obviously, he's used to being the center of attention because he's been touring the country for the past decade, playing concerti all over the place. Well, he's got a new thing that he's doing, which is sort of the Martin Fröst Cult of Personality show, where he takes a lot of different pieces. And what I think, Dave and I were discussing this morning, what gives this its new music cred, he's playing pieces, from the rep of 20th century rep, but certainly not new in the sense of, fresh. But he's not treating them with this uber reverence. He's treating them as sort of mashup material. So the entire show is Martin Fröst on the podium, either playing or conducting or dancing and wearing a mask. And I was scanning through it. There's a performance. The whole thing is called Dollhouse with Martin Fröst, and it was performed already. He's going to be touring with that this year, and it's already been performed by the the Royal Stockholm Philharmonic, and it's like a variety show where he dances and he talks to the audience and he conducts and he plays and he modifies the pieces so that he can play the melody, and they do transitions from one piece to the other that are originally written to transition the pieces. And so instead of insisting, okay, I'm going to play this Stravinsky piece now, be quiet and clap at the end, he's treating all of that content as stuff that he's going to use to make his show instead of this uber reverence that normally is associated with it. It's interesting. He's also, I found out while I was watching it this morning, he's wearing tap shoes. I don't know if you saw that, Ozzy.
No.
So he tap dances a little bit during the show. But anyway, there's an entire hour-and-a-half long performance, and I'll have a link to it in the show notes. If you're interested, people should check that out. It's very well produced. And what's interesting about it is that it's not so over-the-top production-wise that it wouldn't be possible for your average, full-scale concert hall to put it on. There's nothing super special. It's just, lighting and sound. That's all there is. So even though it comes across as being very diverse and something like what most people have never seen, it's doable in most big venues.
It is kind of weird to see the trappings of a big, almost like a stadium rock show, and then have a dude come out and put a clarinet in his mouth.
Yeah,
yes.
For sure.
I mean, he's. I mean, you look at some of those. There are lots of concerti with him. Lots of videos from the last 10 years where he's dancing and twirling and pirouetting while he's playing, and I think he's one of those people that we. Have to champion as a searching artist. Okay, he's effectively done being a clarinet player. Mm-hmm. He has finished that stage of his development a long time ago. Now he's just deciding where can I take this next and how can I incorporate other loves, because clearly he dances very well. I mean, he's a strikingly handsome guy. I mean, everything is there for him to be sort of, again, like a kind of Pied Piper of what we do, and kind of bringing the arts together in a new way,
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
I was gonna say, I think it would be easy for us to look at this and say that it's like a gimmick or something like that, but a couple of things I think keep it at least, I think, reasonably on the other side of that fine line where it is not a gimmick, is first of all, as has been pointed out, the dude can play.
Oh,
Right? This is not in question, and he has a history of playing straight ahead concerts and killing it. And so it's not as though, and you can see plenty of performances like this that are kind of doing similar stagecraft things, where it's clear that this is supplementing somebody's, or maybe, you know, in to fill in for a lack of skill or talent, and it's clearly not the case here. And I wonder, though, if even with that consideration, if there are people that look at this and say that this is just like Branson, Missouri throwing up on the symphony orchestra.
Well, I think there are some that will say that, but his credibility has now established himself that if he's going to embark on a new project, like, people are going to take it seriously because it's him.
Yes.
You know, and it's not, he's putting it out there, and he's trying something new, and people will see it as shtick. I'm sure people will see it as shtick, but there's, you know, if it comes from him, it's at least going to be done with, you would hope, high artistic integrity. You know, and that's when I saw this article, I thought, okay, if he's going there, he thinks that there must be great integrity and artistry in this. And so then you go with an open mind and see what comes out.
Yeah.
And I watched about 10 minutes of it, and I can't say that I've watched the whole thing, but in the sections that I saw, I think it's very clear that there is a clear artistic direction and a vision, like you said, that is beyond just, you know, the flashy look at me kind of thing that a lot of classical music tries to do to you know, get attention, because seemingly not a lot of people are paying us much attention. And I think this is the smart way to do it.
I hear
you. And the way to do it with integrity.
Sure.
Sam, did you have anything else you wanted to say on this?
Well,
I kind of was stepping on you there.
It's just refreshing that someone in his position, he could continue playing the Mozart Concerto 27 times a year and make a great living at it if he wanted to, and he's choosing not to. So that's the biggest reason why I wanted to talk about this story. Kudos to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Also in the news this week, I'm sure that we've all seen movies. Each of us have our own instrument that we play, and we've all seen movies where it's a biopic, or it's a movie about a musician of some kind, and there's fake instrument playing that goes down in the movie, and it is just painful. It is just painful that how unreal it looks, right?
Yeah.
So there's a new movie coming out. The actress's name was it Chloe Moretz? Who is really a great actress. She played Hit Girl in Badass. No, what is not Badass? Kick-Ass. you know the purple hair assassin girl. If you've seen the movie, anyway, that's her. And she plays a cellist in this movie, and she actually took lessons for quite a while. And the way she describes it,
and then gave up, like all good cello students.
Right. The point she makes is that it wasn't to look realistic while playing, and because this is another thing, it's to look realistic while handling the instrument. Because if a non-flute player picks up a flute, or a non-oboe player picks up an oboe, I mean, just by the way they're holding it, you can tell that they're not familiar with that thing. Yeah. And there's sort of a casual intimacy, when you're holding your clarinet in your hand or your bassoon in your hand, it looks like you, right? So she wanted to get that. But as far as the playing parts go, and this is, the article maintains, and as far as I know it's true, this is the first time it's been done, they used a playing body double and stuck her head on top of the body double.
Like digitally, not just like kind of sneakily cutting around it like you would for a lot of other kinds of movies where, you've got one shot of just the pianist's hands and then you see another shot looking over the piano and you see their face.
Mm-hmm.
But like you actually see her head, the actress's head, digitally slapped on top of an actual cellist's
Wow.
body.
And it looks perfect.
Yeah.
And in there's 2 trailers out, and
I will say though the movie looks terrible.
the movie it's
Terrible.
it's a teen romance, bleh. But the cello playing is obviously looks very convincing, and it's very refreshing to see a movie that has this kind of thing in there where they take steps to make the playing look convincing.
And we're gonna get some opportunities to see how some other productions deal with this, because sometime this year, sometime this fall, we should be seeing the first run of Mozart in the Jungle from Amazon.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
What?
There's episodes on that already. There's a couple episodes up.
Yeah. So we talked about the pilot when it came out.
Yep.
I don't think we've talked about anything since then, but the pilot had some okay fake playing.
Mm-hmm.
But frankly, I'm not super offended by it.
No, I mean, as long as they don't try to make it too detailed of a look at the playing and fall very short,
Right.
which often they do, as long as they, don't try to do more than they're capable of as far as portraying the playing. And the main character is an oboe player, so.
Yep.
So we're gonna.
Actually, I think I have my copy of the book is like literally right back there, so it's like, oh yeah.
Have you guys seen Will Ferrell playing bassoon on Jimmy Fallon?
No, I did not see that.
Must find that. That's some purposefully horrible playing, but it's pretty special.
I will put a link to that in the show notes.
You need to find that. That is entertaining.
I have to see that. And to me, going back to Mozart of the Jungle, it's the realism, the lack of complete realism in the playing is okay by me because of the realism in how artists and musicians really are. There's the sex and the drugs and these kinds of things. You're just normal people, and if you're in the music business, and that's the music business, you're exposed to that kind of debauchery more than like a tax attorney is. So
Right.
I'm glad
Yes. No.
I'm glad that show is going to portray, the gritty underparts of the classical music world that people don't really think about. They think, I guess, that you walk around all the time in tails
In a tuxedo. Yeah.
It's like you sleep in it, get up, and go play, and then go home.
You're just prepared to start a string quartet recital at any moment. Spring into action, slide down the telephone pole in your concert black, and yeah.
And go to your local wine bar and start playing.
There you go. That's it. That's the life, right?
Yes.
So another story that we've been following all summer, we've been talking about on and off, has been the Metropolitan Opera and their labor dispute. We talked a few weeks ago about how things looked like they were getting pretty dicey, and then there was a 72-hour extension, and then there was a week-long extension while they got an independent financial analysis, and then we found out early Monday morning they reached a tentative deal with 2 of their unions after hours and hours. They'd stayed up all night, and the stories said that the tentative agreement was reached somewhere around 6:30 on Monday morning after having stayed up all night.
And this is 2 out of something, I think, what was it, like 13 or 14?
There are 15 different unions. They had made agreement with 3 of them earlier in the summer, so there were 12 remaining. These were 2 of the big ones. This was the American Federation of Musicians and AGMA. So this is the unions that represent the members of the orchestra and the singers in the chorus. So they had a tentative agreement Monday morning. We found out a few days later they reached an agreement with the other really giant union, IATSE, which represents the technical employees. And just yesterday, we saw stories that they had reached tentative agreements with all of the remaining unions. So hopefully we will have a season that starts on time. And nobody will, have to lose all the pay of not getting not having a performance. There are still concessions that were made regarding pay by, I think, all of the unions. The scale is going to go down for the next few years. It may go up in the future. And an interesting thing is that they are going to keep an independent financial analyst on staff that will be jointly employed by the organization, the opera itself, and the unions. to oversee how the opera is spending its money. A lot of the unions were saying the opera was wasting money on some of these newer productions that they didn't need to spend.
That didn't go over very well, also.
Right.
Say what? Oh, and yeah, sure. That they blew a bunch of money on the Ring cycle that a lot of people hated.
Right.
And that's maybe a reasonable thing to say. And I want to be clear, when we say new productions, that includes new productions of Wagner. That doesn't just mean new productions of new operas like Nico Muley's Two Boys. This is new creations around existing operas as well, which is why they're going to keep doing the same production of La Boheme until well after we're all dead.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how having this independent financial oversight kind of comptroller ombudsman role affects the work that the opera does, and maybe affects the relationship between management and labor. It's interesting that this person is going to be employed by both sides, so they will have a responsibility to be open about the books to both sides.
That's a fantastic idea.
It's a great idea. I don't know if anything like that exists in any other organization. I'm not sure any other organization really needs it as badly as the Met does either, though, with all of the different unions and all of the different kinds of productions and all of the different people that they employ at that.
And
budget
big
level.
money. They probably spend more money than any opera company around, and big money equals big room for at least accusations of waste.
Right. And a lot of people think Peter Gelb is great, and a lot of people think Peter Gelb is an idiot. He got a pretty friendly, fluffy profile in the Wall Street Journal this weekend, speaking in fond, hazy tones of his time at Sony and other places. So we'll see. As far as I know, most of these agreements have yet to be ratified by their membership. Right. It's possible that the membership throws it out. But they do have something that they are going to look at and vote on, and that's a pretty huge step.
Yes, it is.
If we had the independent financial analyst paired with something that's like the proposed 990 project of Drew McManus, that would be a game changer, I think. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a guy that we've had on the show a lot, Drew McManus, who is an orchestra business consultant and super smart guy. Did a Kickstarter to raise money to digitize and make keyword searchable all the 990 data, which is like the financial records of nonprofits. So that when for orchestras, so that when a labor dispute comes up and the musicians are getting the local population on their side, and it becomes this sort of melee between stakeholders and people trying to gain support from one side or the other. If average everyday people who love opera and want to support opera can go and look for themselves and get the answer about the true answer about what's going on with the finances by being able to keyword search all their 990 data, that would be a big thing, I think.
Well, it's nice that there's that the Met has gone, although I'm sure they didn't see it this way, that they're essentially hiring an ombudsperson.
Yeah.
To sort of, okay, let's keep you honest, and let's try and keep you honest, and I will look at your association with a critical eye, with malice towards none, and trying to be fair and equitable here.
Right.
And maybe arts organizations are going to go down that path at some point, where when the money's just so big and there's so many things invested in it that you need someone to come in and just say, look, we just need a full-time guy here, and to make sure that everything's on the up and up and square.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dave, you mentioned Nico Muley's opera Two Boys. There's a recording out now, by the way, if anyone's interested. Just the other day, I saw it flash through the social media something or other.
Cool.
Well, we should check it out.
I'm gonna go buy me that.
Yeah. All right. I think that's gonna. Sam, did you have any other news? Am I missing something? I feel like.
Nope.
All right.
We're always paranoid since we got 3 music scholars on the show. Did anybody important in classical music pass away this week? Because we're always scared.
Sam, you're always fixated on the obit. I think that's really strange.
I don't want somebody super important to pass away and not mention it.
Not that I'm
Not
aware.
that I know of.
All right, well, good.
Well, that's then we're safe.
You're safe. Or you can just blame us.
That's right.
Sure.
Will do.
I
You
think we'll
were
probably
not
just blame
so-
Sam though.
Yeah.
So thank you to everyone who's watching or listening. We really appreciate people tuning in. If you've not caught the show before, you should be sure to do that. We're at soundnotion.tv/SN. You can check out all of our archives of this and all our shows. You can also find links to all the things that we talked about. Sam puts together a great collection of show notes every week that includes links to all the stories that we talked about. We'll have links to all the things that our guests have going on, links to their site and their new record, and you can read more about them, buy their album, and listen to all the music. It's great stuff. So thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate
Thanks for
it.
having us, man. Yeah, I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, and you guys are doing a credit to classical music. And
Well, that's very flattering. Thank you for saying.
Categorize it.
Well, he said so you should listen to more.
Yes.
It's okay to listen to the archives. They're still worthwhile. It's been demonstrated. So thank you to everyone who's watching and listening. You can subscribe to this show and all our shows at soundnotion.tv in the iTunes store or wherever finer podcasts are aggregated. You can subscribe and catch all the shows for free. If you'd like to support the show, if you see some value in what we do, we would really appreciate it if you would like to share some of that value back. The easiest way to do that is to tell your friends, leave us kind reviews in the iTunes store or wherever you get your podcasts. If you are buying stuff on Amazon, you can use the little Amazon search box on the right side of our site. It doesn't cost you anything else, but if you find your thing through that little search box, we get a tiny commission for having sent you there, and that helps us out a lot. You can also use the PayPal donation links on our site if you're feeling generous in that way as well. SoundNotion's introduction includes music by Patrick Gullo. Thank you so much for watching or listening to our show. We'll be back. We stream the show live at 11 a.m. Eastern Time at soundnotion.tv/live, and you can pop in there to ask questions. We'll see you back next week.
We'll see you at the wine bar.
At the wine bar.